And good evening, folks. It's once again time, Real Politics, Saturday evening, talking about taxes, policy, politics, a little bit of politics, not too much, and stocks, bonds, ETFs, metals, all types of investment vehicles, and asking for your questions about taxes. I am a tax preparer. I've been doing tax preparation for quite a few years. I am authorized as an e-file provider from the IRS. So ask away any tax questions and I'll try to answer them. And we're going to be talking about stocks. Actually, specifically my portfolio. I'm going to bury it all. I'm going to show it all to you folks. And you can take it apart. You can let me have it or give me an attaboy, one or the other. And once again, backed by popular demand, we have Mario Reina from McAllen. He is a candidate for District 3, I believe, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Excuse me?
How is the campaign going?
Well, the campaign is going great. We have all the material that one can get out so people recognize that we are participating in an important event. We're going to get more material out, direct mail, phone calls, walk the neighborhood so people can recognize us a little bit more. So obviously, I think part of the campaign is for people to recognize that you're doing, and the other part is to appreciate what you stand for. And so we want to get our message out as quickly as we can.
Now, there's word going around that you're actually going to form teams because there's so many people running for all the different positions. You're actually going to have a baseball team, and then whichever team wins, that's who's going to take the positions and govern.
Yeah.
Is that a good deal?
Yeah. Actually, in the district that I'm in, there's 3 people, but I hear that some districts have maybe 6 people. At the last time I checked, there's about 5 individuals that are running for mayor. So there's going to be lots of messages all over the place. So I think the community will have plenty of choices to make. So it's not going to be one of those that's there's nothing going on. Who do I select? When you have so many candidates, you have to figure out who has the right message, the right vision for McAllen.
Well, we would definitely wish you luck.
Thank you.
We'll be keeping an eye on it and reporting as we see it.
Fantastic.
The latest news out actually yesterday is the new, I guess, Biden stimulus plan. It was approved and moved to the Senate, and then the Senate had an all-nighter, and they came back and added several amendments, which means it now goes back to the House for approval of the amendments. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a $1.9 trillion. It's I don't know if you remember how many zeros a trillion has, but it's a lot of zeros. So when you look at something like that, it is significant. I mean, we have to remember that typically the federal government has a budget, and usually the budget is exceeded by a certain amount. Usually in the past several years, maybe $1 trillion above the federal budget. So what happens when it's in the current year, it's referred to as a deficit. Once it gets into the national, once it goes beyond 1 year, then it becomes part of the national debt. So the last time I checked, we were at maybe 23, 24 trillion dollars. So it's an incredible amount of money. So you're looking at 1.9 trillion. What is it going to do? Well, it's going to give more money to individuals, perhaps $1,400. It's going to go into helping cities and states. It's going to go into the unemployment. It's going to go into a lot of pockets to help people withstand this predicament that we're in. But at the same time, we have to remember that the year ends in September. And if we're already doing 1.9 above what is normal. I can just imagine what the deficit is going to be come 30 September. So my estimation is probably 4 or 5 trillion dollars by the time we're all done, and then it becomes part of the national debt, and then eventually someone will have to pay this particular debt, and we're talking about. I think the last time we talked about how much it is on an individual basis. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
It is, and of course, the overall budget is really not a true number because you have unfunded liabilities that the federal government has promised to pay. If X happens, then the federal government will step in and pay. But although that really doesn't add inflation or add to inflation, it's still a real number. Last time I heard, it was like around 24 trillion for a real true deficit when you count unfunded liabilities.
It is a huge number, but when you look at the total value of our nation, the last time I looked at it, it's something like $198 trillion. If you go to the debt clock, I think I might have shown it to you. If you just Google the debt clock, it has you a bunch of information, and one of the pieces of information is going to give you the value of this country. So when you look at 23, 20, $25 trillion versus the value of the national assets, then you begin to wonder, how much, what's going on here. But I think the other part that you're talking about is the Medicare, Medicaid, unfunded situation there. I mean, that's also a significant number.
It is, and when you say somebody's going to pay for it, it's not necessarily in the future. It could just be around the corner in the form of inflation. And actually, when you think about it, that's all the Fed has. They've run out of bullets. They've run out of ammo. And the only thing I think that they have is to actually start paying off that debt is raise inflation. I mean, they're talking about, oh, we're happy with 2 to 3%, but then they're using numbers that don't take into account all the valid inflationary value.
Yeah. So I guess when we talk about inflation, I think the last time I put it into perspective that when my dad used to borrow money, he would borrow money and then pay back a year and a half later, 2 years, and he would pay back the same amount of money. The concept of inflation was not talked about because we didn't know about inflation. But $1,000 today is not $1,000 a year from now. It's not $1,000 2 years from now. So if you have inflation, let's assume a worse nightmare. Let's say inflation is 10%. So whatever monies we borrowed 10 years ago, that inflation is going to just wipe it out. So who is hurt? In every accounting transaction, there's two entries. One is for the liability. When I say we, the country has the liability, and the other one is the asset. Who has the asset? The people that buy the bonds. It could be individual people. It could be the countries around the world that buy the assets. And last time I checked, about 7 trillion of our national debt is owned by a foreign country. Wish them well. If we have inflation, well, they're not going to get the money that they put in. So at that point, I think people get antsy and they start trying to cash in their bonds. So you might see a lot of activity. But I mean, that's what I believe almost the same way that you do, that inflation will take care of the debt eventually.
If you take a mortgage, for example, and I tell this to my clients that rent, that they feel that it's more cost effective to rent. And I tell them, you take out a 30-year mortgage, let's round figures $100,000 at 3%. They will be living for free Actually,
Yeah,
if they get anything less than 3%,
yeah,
they'll actually be getting paid to be living in their home.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, right now, I think when you look at some of the interest rates, I mean, they're at 3% maybe, and if you have a 15-year note, it's probably lower than 3%. I mean, that's free money. You know, that is free money. When someone gives you free money, take it and do something with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do something with it. You know, especially since you want to talk about the stock market, but don't do this. Don't do this. We're just talking. You know, if you wanted to be bold and someone said, "I'll let you borrow money at 3%," you know, and you can do something with it, perhaps in a mutual fund. Perhaps you can do 10%. So you can pay back your 3%, and you stay with 7%. But don't do that. We're just talking as an example. But I mean, it's a crazy possibility that you could do something like that.
Let's read some of the comments that come in. Claudia, hey, good evening. Claudia, how you doing? And Chelsea, howdy, howdy. Howdy. 12 zeros and a trillion. I wish I had that tree behind my house. Yeah, that's true.
That's a lot of zeros.
Get ready for inflation. Buy physical gold and silver. Absolutely, Fred.
Absolutely.
But you got to
Yeah.
diversify regardless. Unfunded liabilities, 122 trillion. Well, I'm not sure it's that high, but it's definitely high. What do you foresee happening to Medicare and Medicaid if they decide to pay $15 an hour? I think it'll backfire on them. I think that your robot hamburger flipper innovation will kick in. Um, they're not going to get the payroll taxes that they really want. They're going to see inflation, and they're going to see less employment, and they're going to uh, just price everybody out. I mean, it's got to be market driven.
Absolutely. I think the the wages haven't been increased. I think it's been over maybe 10, 15 years. It's been a long time since the last adjustment that they made. But it's, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at the something like 750 perhaps an hour. What is it, 750 nowadays?
I think it's 725.
Okay, 725. So imagine that they go to $15. That's a 100% increase. Someone has to absorb that cost, and the likelihood of people doing that, they would probably better for them to buy equipment, like you're saying. They already have the robot hamburger flippers. That's happening already, and so you will begin to see a lot of automation. And so I guess at the end of the day, uh, I think we talked about this the last time. We need to prepare our population to be involved in more technical jobs, because imagine that there is a hamburger flipper. Well, that machine needs someone to take care of it. And wherever you go, whatever restaurant operation you have, they're going to have the same piece of equipment. So someone has to take care of it. And then you're going to see all kinds of automation. So people have to be prepared for what's going to happen in the future. And yeah, maybe so. Maybe you can get, I doubt it, but maybe let's say you can have an increase in the hourly rate. I think that's going to probably add initially some inflation into everything. And then, that will impact all the other finances that we're talking about.
Well, I know that they want to do it in a stepped amount over the 4 years that Biden should be here. I think whether he is or not, I don't know, but I believe they're going to do it stepped, but it's still the same result, anyways. 4 years is a short time. Who's hurt? The poorest people who are going to be buying $8 milk. That's who, and of course, your entry level jobs, your high school kids that need to get a little bit of experience.
Right.
Those are the guys that are going to get hurt.
But you're right. If you all of a sudden increase the hourly rate, well, someone has to pay for it, and that someone ultimately is a consumer. And you will. I'm not saying you're going to see $8 for milk, but there will be, in the bread basket, as they call it, there will be price increases in those products that we use every day. I mean, someone has to eat the cost, and more than likely, I suspect it'll be the consumer.
I can see it already at two of my favorite restaurants for breakfast. One of them doesn't do free refills anymore. They charge the initial cup and then a quarter for refills. On the
Yeah.
other, the cups went from $1.50 to $2. So it's already happening. I used to go to a taco place and get two tacos and two coffees for like around $6. Now it's $9 to $10. So
Yeah.
it's already happening.
Yeah, so I think we need to be prepared for the automation that's going to take place. So it's only extremely important that the individuals that are watching this program, that they start to get skills that are higher level skills in the technology, the sciences, and what have you.
You got to remember that the model is there. When I used to work for HP, my territory was just the valley. And then as the systems got more reliable, they started to lay off people from other areas, and my coverage area was Laredo to Brownsville, and then eventually Corpus.
Yeah.
So it actually didn't help that systems got better and reliable because you needed less and less people. The same thing
Yeah.
will apply for the robots in that they needed wait staff, cooks, and everything at every restaurant. Now they're going to have less personnel, and yes, there's going to be jobs, but that tech job will be taking care of X number of sites.
Yeah, and thanks. It's not just the people that work in restaurants. The technology is very close now, where the trucks are already driving by themselves. Freight trucks, the big rigs. So in the next 8 to 10 years, I see a lot of the freight trucks being fully automated. So what's going to happen there? Imagine all the trucks that go across America, and you start seeing them. They're fully automated. I mean, right now, my research says that some of these trucks, they get to the big cities, and they stop, and then they have an actual driver come in and guide them all to the final destination because of the traffic patterns. But out in the open, I think if you just Google auto, the self-driving truck, it gives you an idea of where we're going with this. And then we have the technology for airplanes. I mean, you know about drones. They fly by themselves. So the technology is there, but people don't feel good. Can you imagine getting on a plane and there's no pilot? So the technology is there. And then the other part, which is, extremely, is going to revolutionize everything that we know. The self-driving car. Imagine that. Self-driving car that's not going to speed. It's not going to bump into anything. So what's going to happen? Well, you don't need the cops on the street because what do they do? They just give you traffic tickets. So you don't need them anymore because you're not going to speed. Insurance. Think about the insurance. I mean, the likelihood of this thing crashing is going to be so small that the insurance industry will probably take a big hit. And then you think about the cars that are self-driving. They can take it to the store. They can take it to the mall. They go back. I mean, all these things that you're talking about is self-automation. It's going to impact a lot of people. So we just have to be ready for this kind of thing. I mean, right now, and I'm sure you heard about this. I mean, there's robots that conduct some surgeries. I mean, it's at that point where robots are doing surgery. So, but the good thing, if there's a good thing to all of this, is that all this equipment needs someone to program it, to maintain it. So that's where the jobs might be migrated to. So you just have to be prepared. I think maybe me more than you, Cruz. I think it's not one of my biggest concerns, but if you were, 15, 16, 17, I would be thinking about, yeah, before you pursue a degree, go and find out what the jobs of the future are, and pursue those kind of degrees, because the jobs of the future are going to be totally different than what we have nowadays.
Absolutely. Um, Claudia says, just like it happened in Mexico in the 90s, that they decided to remove the zeros, so you had 1,000 pesos become one. Yeah, that's
But the one thing you don't know, Claudia, is that the reason they removed the zeros is because they were occupying a lot of computer space. And they took away the zeros, but it was more of a computer issue than anything else. It was just they were occupying so much computer space that they needed to get rid of it to make it easy. Nowadays, we have plenty of storage, but back then they didn't have the storage. So, let's take the zeros out.
inflation has gone up always. Yeah, there's been a few times of deflation, but yeah, how can you all say if the minimum wage goes up that people will be hurting when they are hurting now because their wages have stayed the same forever, yet prices have been going up consistently?
True, true. I think and this is why I have always promoted the idea that you get paid what you're worth, and so the minimum wage is not an indication of anything. This is just what they're saying for this particular skill, whatever it may be. I am willing to pay this much. So it's up to us to have better skills to get more money for your skills. So yes, I agree. People are hurting, and so what happens with individuals that are this particular wages, they get other situations than their income tax. And Cruz can probably talk more about this. You get some benefit from perhaps the housing, perhaps childcare, perhaps you get more reimbursement because they took some income tax and they returned some of it back. Although you're only supposed to pay, I have never paid more than what I'm supposed to. I always pay a little bit at the end of the year because I never give them everything that they want. But I think, Cruz, you probably know more about the how people that are in this particular wages, how they get help from the government.
Well, they do get help, an immediate help, an immediate boost, but in the long run, it still adds up. It still snowballs. There's more money and the pie grows bigger, but it's the pie's got to have ingredients and be paid for.
Yeah.
It's going to cost more. That pie's going to cost more. Yeah, the government is in a hard place right now because yes, people need the assistance, people need the boost. They got to pay the rent, they got to buy the food, but it's going to add up.
Yeah. So yeah, Irene, the other part is that that individuals that are in this particular wages, they probably get help, supplemental nutrition, food stamps. They probably perhaps get some, Medicaid. So there's probably some other forms of help for them, and there's plenty of programs out there. But the more important thing is for no one to be caught in this particular predicament, and so you really have to go out and have better skills so you can get more money.
Everything would go up, Irene. Products and services would go up because employers would have to pay the additional amount. Your taxes would go up. Your rent would go up. Again, because of labor. The city governments have to pay for the city workers, the civil servants. So they got to raise your taxes to pay for that. Police services, well, I don't know any police service that's getting $7.25 an hour. They're probably out there pretty good, but everything would have to eventually go up, goods and services.
Absolutely.
Claudia says, "Thank God my mortgage is at 225." That's great. Good to
That's
know.
great.
I should be done paying in less than 2 years because I'm paying $100 more per month into the principal.
Wow.
Good deal.
Congratulations. That's good.
Total of 10 years instead of 15. Yeah, I always recommend that. As a matter of fact, I always say that your home should be priority, because if anything should happen to your job or to your health, if your house is paid for, you're not going to be out on the street. You're going to have to pay taxes, but those on a fixed income, you can probably take care of that. But there's plenty of situations that I have come across where somebody gets hurt, gets disabled, they don't have a job, they lose their house. So paying off the mortgage is, I guess, it's still a good idea to try to take care of it as soon as you can.
Absolutely. You know, what you're doing, Claudia, is what everybody should do. Pay off the principal every month a little bit. You're putting $100. That's fantastic. You know, the more principal you pay off, obviously, the less interest you will be paying. And although it's a 2.25%, still that's money that you can use yourself instead of giving it to someone else. So that is fantastic.
Consumer pay all expenses. Yep, eventually.
Yes, yes, yes.
Will you be making any OnlyFans for stock tips? I'm not sure. As a matter of fact, I'm really reluctant to do this, but I'm going to anyways. Minimum wage in 2009, state tuition was 6,900. Subway combo was 5. Average rent 1,064. Minimum wage 2021 725, and tuition is 11,900. Subway combo 8. That combo was $6, not maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And average rent is over $1,700. Yep, absolutely. Even in San Juan, rent is pretty damn high.
Yeah.
The rent is
Yeah.
too damn high. You remember that mayor, that candidate in New York? That was the slogan. The rent too damn high.
Yep. Yeah.
Irene says, well, during this pandemic, it's unskilled people that were needed and utilized. Well,
Yes.
yeah, I guess they were considered
Essential.
essential workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fred speaking to Irene, the problem isn't wages, the problem is people living above their means and over leveraging themselves with consumer debt. That is a problem, absolutely.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of times, I guess human psychology, pretend for a minute that you're making 725, 725 in 8 hours, you're probably looking at, $60 a day. We look around and you see what other people are doing, and obviously, $60 a day might not give you all those instant gratification. So what people do, they get into buying things on credit, and usually, if you get involved with the credit cards, I mean, you're looking at interest rates way above 10%. So for every dollar that you're spending, if it's 10%, you're going to give someone else a dime for that dollar eventually. So yes, it goes back to everything else that we're talking about. We need to not see ourselves in a predicament where we are getting paid minimum wage. So, you know, go to school. We all have 24 hours a day, and what you do with those 24 hours is up to you. We can find a lot of reasons why we can't go to school, but at the end of the day, when those 24 hours are gone, and we haven't improved ourselves, then you're gonna find yourself in a predicament.
There's groups out there that just deal with credit card, not credit card debts, but credit cards. They notify the group whenever a new promo for a credit card comes up. I know that some people on that group, they go from credit card, then they transfer the debt. They get it at zero interest, and then they transfer the debt to another credit card offering a promo of zero interest, and then it's on and on. But eventually, there's not going to be enough promos, so Hopefully, that
No, eventually you have to pay,
eventually.
and you can only roll over things so many times before the credit bureau is going to see that you have a bunch of open credit cards, and so they will probably not allow you to get too many credit cards.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they'll
mean,
definitely.
just today, for example, I went to the store, and there's a guy saying, "Hey, if you apply for this credit card, I'll give you $20." I'm thinking, so what am I going to do with $20? I said, no, I have two credit cards, and that's all I need. I don't need any more credit cards.
Charlie says credit cards are the root of all financial. Damn mosquito. Financial problems. Well, it definitely is. You mentioned 10%. I think it's more like 21%.
Well,
Most
it's extremely high. I was being, very conservative. But let me say this, Charlie, the credit is important, extremely important. We need to function on credit. None of us buy all the things that we want on a cash basis, specifically a house, specifically a car. If it wasn't for the credit mechanism that exists, we would not be able to turn so many things over like we do in this country. And I'll give you an example because I traveled to Mexico, and every now and then I'll stop by and I'll talk to the people that are offering credit cards. And the interest rates in Mexico are a lot higher than they are here. So the problem is that we as individuals need to know how to manage the credit that you are given. There is a situation where you can have too much credit. So based on your income will determine how big your house is, what kind of car you're going to get. But if it wasn't for the credit mechanism, we would not be able to buy homes, because who has $100,000 cash to buy a house? I don't know. A lot of people that do that. Yeah, I don't.
That's true. Fred says the reason prices have gone up is because of the Fed and federal intervention in the economy. And you, ma'am, are asking more of it. I guess he's talking to Irene or perhaps Claudia. I'm not sure. Charlie says my wife got caught rolling over credit card to another credit cards. We were in the whole 50,000. That is quite a bit.
Yeah.
I paid it off and cut all our cards.
Yeah.
Excellent. Credit score is 820, and of course they're probably knocking down your door.
They want to give you more. They want to give you more.
Don't need a lot of credit. That's true.
There was a mention about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve plays a very key function in our country. There's maybe 3 or 4 items that they try to pursue, but one of them is to make sure there's enough money supply. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, right? They have to make sure there's enough money out there for people to do things. And the other thing that they try to do is to make sure that full employment is out there throughout the country. And full employment used to be, if you have 4% unemployment, then we consider that to be that you're fully employed. So they play with the interest rates a lot. And if you have been listening to the news lately, they have the interest rates at 0. So why? More or less, it's at 0. Why? Because this way corporations can borrow money, so they can buy things, buy equipment, buy buildings and whatnot. So that keeps everything in motion, keeps people employed. So they play, the Federal Reserve plays a very important role, and sometimes, they do get bashed a little bit, if you will. But just imagine for a minute that the Federal Reserve did not exist. Imagine what would have happened in 2008. So the economy was going in the tanks, and they come in. And so what happens with the Federal Reserve, if they need to put, people say that they're printing money, they're not printing money. So what happens, the government will give them a loan. They will buy all the bonds from the government, and they put the money out in the streets. And so the government is supposed to pay eventually the Federal Reserve. And if you look at the statistics of the Federal Reserve, they always return money because they you can't help but make money. You know, you have all this. They call it a balance sheet. So when you get a chance, Google the Federal Reserve and see their balance sheet. And they have a balance sheet. The last time I checked, maybe to the tune of 6, 7, $8 trillion, because they buy things, they keep it, they give the money out, and money is in circulation. And then when the time comes, if there's too much money out there, they will sell what they have to reduce the money supply. So it's a very, very interesting function that they have. And the main function, the main tool, they call it open market operations. So I have always enjoyed the Federal Reserve. I have studied them all my life. And for me, you know, and I understand everybody has an opinion about it, but if it wasn't for the Federal Reserve, you know, we would have been in a lot of hurt. And, you know, it would have been, everything would have collapsed and fine. You know, we can allow things to collapse, but imagine that General Motors was wiped out. Imagine, you know, of course, Chrysler went away. Imagine that, you know, AIG went away. Imagine that all those banks all of a sudden disappeared. I don't want to see that. I never want. I don't want to see that, because there would be so much hurt that none of us would ever want to see that.
But there's two trains of thought on that. Whenever you do have too much money out there, not only do you have inflation, you have you start growing your wealth gap. I don't know if you've studied the wealth gap. That in times of fast and loose money like we're having now, you'll notice that those that have the assets get wealthier.
Yeah.
When the money is in the hands of the consumer, they're going to go out and consume, but really they're making the wealthy wealthier. They have the assets.
Yeah. You know, so Bernie Sanders used to talk about the 1/10 of 1%. And it's an actual situation, you know, the 1/10 of 1%, you know, they controlled a lot of the resources. I'm talking about the Jeff Bezos of the world, the guy from Facebook, you know, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, you know, individuals like that. You know, when you have, the last time I checked, I think Jeff Bezos was at $200 billion. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Elon Musk now, I think, is the wealthiest guy in the world on paper, not real dollars, on paper, because of the Tesla stock. All of his wealth is related to the stock in Tesla. So imagine this guys that they have so much. So how do you get, if you want to redistribute wealth, you know, what is it that needs to occur? So you know, it's something that the only way that I know that you can participate at this high levels of income activity, it goes back to what I'm saying. You know, you need to prepare yourself to be part of that. You know, and the other part is going to be, do we intentionally redistribute wealth? Although right now we're doing it, you know, that $1.9 trillion, someone's going to pay for it. Somehow it's going to be paid for it. You know, people are getting money for what? For no reason. I mean, they're not working, and so they're getting money. And when you think about it, you know, how is it that you can get money if you're not producing? You have to produce to get money. If you don't produce, then things begin to fall apart.
Or buy assets. They go up in value, resell it.
Yeah.
You produce a
and you and I participate in the stock market.
correct.
This week,
form of asset.
yeah, this week, for example, the stock market has been at the highest it has ever been, the highest. And I think I told you the last time that I expect the stock market to continue to go up. And so I'm in. I'm in the stock market. I expect it to go up. but at the same time, I have this expectation, and I will be monitoring everything. And when the time comes, I'll do something different.
Well, that's a good time to segue into my portfolio. Let me go ahead and show the folks a summary of my portfolio. I'm not sure if you can see that. Can you see that fairly well?
You probably need a magnifying glass for me anyway. But I saw it. So
Let me
what Cruz has,
maybe
he
a
has a
little
lot of
bit bigger. There we go.
uh, what you have is a lot of precious metals, gold and silver and whatnot. And I buy those kind of stocks, the one that you had. Is this something current right now, or something in the past?
This is current as of yesterday's close. So just to review what I've got, Micro Focus was basically HP sold some IP, some intellectual property, which is software,
Mm-hmm.
to Micro Focus. And in doing so, they gave shareholders stock in Micro Focus. However, there's some legal issues going on right now. According to HP, they are suing Micro Focus. They misrepresented what they were going to do with the IP. So I don't know the status of the lawsuit. When it first came on, as you can see, my loss on that is 54%.
Yeah.
However, that's house money. Since it was, in essence, part of HP that spun off into Micro Focus, I got a piece of the action without having lost in HP. I'm just holding on to it. I don't have to do anything with it. It's not. I remember it's not a loss until you sell.
Until you sell it.
CRTD Inc. Believe it or not, I don't remember why I bought it. It was one of those things that I got it, and then so now it's there. GDX, that's a minor. Again, gold. It's an
Yeah.
ETF. And the reason why I stopped buying ETFs is the premium. Some premiums on some ETFs are just too high. You can do better by buying the actual stock yourself. All you have to do is go to the ETF.
So Cruz, how do you buy your stock?
Through specifically Fidelity.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, another one, GLDM, a gold. Barrick is a gold, precious metals. USAU is a precious metal. GLD, of course, is an ETF. Bar, Granite Shares, all these are gold. And of course, you definitely want to be in gold, but really physical gold. The only thing I'm doing with these shares and ETFs is short term, because these shares and ETFs will go down when the market goes down.
Yeah.
They're really not safe. They're not a safe haven. They're not a store of value in when shit hits the fan, because they will go down as well. So really, I'm diversified in paper, and I do have some actual physical, but for short term, I'm using these for quick gains, I suppose. Shift Technologies, that is kind of like a CarMax without the lot. They're actually doing pretty good up until recently. I'm only down just a little bit, 90.91%. But the concept is they're like a broker, a virtual broker between parties. They facilitate the sale of used cars between parties. Royal Gold is again a conglomerate, I guess, of different mines. Enphase, this is part of the solar or green energy. I hate what Biden's going to do with green energy, because that's redistribution of wealth. but I can take advantage of it and ride the Biden green bubble, the green bus, if you will.
Yeah.
Ace is a pretty popular inverter or mini inverter that goes on each solar panel. And I'm also into the electric vehicle, EV sector. EPEV is electric vehicles, expand,
Mhm.
mind medicine, and subordinate voting. That I don't remember what I bought or why I bought it, but it has to do with uh, psychology and meds for chiskitis, and those that are familiar with that word, I guess I'm not sure whether I should be using it or not, but they're developing some psychiatric meds.
Mhm.
Square, they're growing by leaps and bounds. Square is a credit card company. They're the owners of Cash App, and I forget what else they're into, but having to do with finance.
Yeah, a lot of times when you go to the store or you go to a small business and they come up with a little square that attached to their phone, this is what it square, because it's a little square and they charge you right on the spot from their phone. And
Right.
that's probably why they came up with the name Square.
And as you can see at about the Royal Gold line, I sorted from negative to positive. And at this point, it's where it starts to go up. And I haven't sold these yet. I'm actually getting ready to. Gatos is the silver. Aberdeen is silver. Neo is EV. Neo is the Chinese. Um, what would you call it? The Chinese, not the cheap car because they're not cheap, but they are going to develop, I guess, the 20 to $30,000 EV in China.
Yeah. So, I looked at your stocks and you're heavy into metals.
Yep.
You're heavy into science, and it's great. I mean, it's a little bit riskier uh, things that I would do. I think I talked to you about. I'll tell you some of the things that I have just to give it for comparison. So some of the stocks that I have. Let me see. Let me get there. So, for example, I have DuPont. I have General Mills. I have healthcare. I have gold. Yamaha Gold. I have Truist Financial. It's a bank. I have Procter and Gamble. I have AT&T. So you can tell, you can get a sense of how conservative I am. I have Coca-Cola. I have Citibank, Citigroup. I have AEP. AEP are those people that run the electric lines. SAPs, those are the software people. I have advanced micro devices. So that's what I have. Pfizer, Federal Express, Verizon, Las Vegas, casinos. I'm into casinos. Um, what else do I have? I have Moody's. Those are the credit rating people. SBA Communications. Unilever, those are the soap people. I'll call them the soap people. We all have to take a bath, though. That's why I buy those. So I'm more conservative than you are, Cruz. You are something else. I like that.
Well, the rule of thumb for you folks that are wanting to learn to invest or dabble in the stock market, I've got too many. The rule of thumb is if you got to spend more than an hour to review a day to review your portfolio, you really have too many. You have too much to
Yeah.
do for your average investor. If you're going to be a professional about it and you're going to be in front of a screen all day long, that's one thing. But if you got to go to work and you want to take a look at your portfolio to make maybe a couple of decisions, if you're spending more than an hour, you've got too many. It should be like around 10. I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but for the average person, it should be about 10 items at the
Yeah.
most.
So basically, and I try to keep it that way because each activity, for example, will take me maybe 30 seconds to a minute to do what I need to do. So usually you have a predetermined price where you want to sell. You can set it up where you want to sell. So you just go away, and if it gets to that price, it will sell. And then, the stock market opens at 8 o'clock. But the real bell rings at 8:30. So between 8 to 8:30, there's pre-bell activity. So you cannot use the other functions that I have in Robinhood. You have to wait until 8:30, because once it comes to 8:30, then you can chase a stock going down. You can chase it. What I mean, if the stock is going down, I want to chase it until it stops, and then it goes up 1%, and then it will buy automatically. You can do 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever percentage you want. I prefer, 1%, because it just follows it. It's going down, going down, going down, and you chase it. A lot of people will have a specific price for a stock, and a lot of times you can do that, but the stock is going to continue to go down, so might as well chase it. It will stop eventually, and when it stops, it goes up 1%. You buy, and then it continue. Hopefully, it'll continue to go up, and that's how you make your money. And the pattern, because I think I told you the last. I'm not a day trader. I'm a pattern trader. I follow a pattern, and so I have done, very well. But this is a hobby for me. Everything else that I have is for long term, and it's done through mutual funds. I have several categories of mutual funds, small cap, large cap, on information, science and technology. I have some bonds in case things go crazy. So I try to maintain a 30-70 ratio, 70% in equity and 30% in bonds. So if the things go crazy, the bonds are not going to go crazy. It's going to stay where they are. And then eventually everything will regroup, and they'll go back up again.
That's a good diversification. I definitely need to do some homework and diversify a little bit more. Now, most of this was pre-election, where I was just getting prepared to see if crap was going to hit the fan, and people were just going to rush into maybe gold and silver, and I was going to try to take advantage of that. And it's been flat, so eventually I'll get out of that.
I just want to tell your audience, for example, there's three main that I follow. Something called the Dow Jones, and the Dow is basically 30 companies, and they go up and down, and at the end of the day, there's either went up or went down. The other one is called the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is 500 stocks. So they go up and down. They, at the end of the day, they do a calculation, and they'll say it went up or down. And then the other one is the NASDAQ. There's more, but the NASDAQ is one that has thousands of shares. But just to give you an idea, the Dow, for example, the Dow, a 52-week low was 18,000. Right now it's at 31,000. Okay, so how much is that? That is a lot. It has gone up a lot. So if you had stock in those 30 companies, Coca-Cola, Verizon, what have you, you would be doing maybe 30-40% richer. Okay, the NASDAQ, for example, if I can get this thing to work, sometimes things don't work as they should. The NASDAQ, 52-week low, 6,600. Right now is at 13,870. This is the highest it has ever been. So think about from 6,600 to 13,800, the kind of jump it went up. It's like what? You're looking maybe at 100% jump. It's a lot. It's a lot of money that if you were involved with the right stocks in this past year, you would have done extremely well. So, and I don't have the S&P in my phone, but those are the three main ones that you need to follow. And and look at the history of the stock market. I mean, this one, Nasdaq, was started like in 1971. The S&P was started in the 60s. The Dow is the oldest one. The Dow started like in 1884. So it's been around a lot of time. So perhaps, during school, you might have heard about the Great Depression, and they talk about the Dow. The Dow crashed during the Great Depression. So if you go look at that number, it was a minuscule number compared to what it is today. It was like, I don't know, 200. It went down to 100. And people were jumping off the bridge because they had lost all their value. But those are the three areas that you probably need to look at, and then try to make decisions like which way to go.
Doesn't that make you nervous, though? I mean, I've got one trigger on the buy and one finger on the buy and one finger on the sell.
Yeah, and that is the reason I have a 70-30 mix, because I expect that things are going to happen, but in one phone call I can change the whole equation very quickly, and it just depends. If I get nervous, but at the same time I know that even if it goes down, it will go up. It's just a matter of time, before it goes up. So the market crashed, for example, in 2008. And that's when President Obama came in. So it was not until probably 2012 before it was at the level that it used to be before it crashed. So it took 4 years. Do you want to wait 4 years? Well, you should, because you don't want to take a loss. And that's why, I have the split that I have, the 70-30, because if I need to use the money for any reason, I go to the bonds, and that's going to stay pretty flat, maybe 2 or 3%. Growth, appreciation, whatever you want to call it. So that's the way I do it.
Claudia says, who would have thought Cruz is heavy metal?
Yeah. Precious metal, precious.
Yeah.
Precious metal.
Fred says the American stock market is overvalued. It's due for a correction. There is a term called crash up.
Yep.
So
it is true. It is true. I mean, right now, a lot of people feel that we're on a bubble. But what I read, Fred, it says that it's going to go beyond 40,000, the Dow. So if the Dow goes beyond 40,000, I expect the Nasdaq to go, my gosh, I would imagine another 6,000. So if it's at 13, it's going to go to 20. My gosh. So imagine that you are involved in this, but you have to be paying attention, because eventually all this comes to an end, and you have to be able to use your best judgment and check out. And I have done this in the last 7 or 8 years, because the market, I expected this thing to they call it a correction. I expected this to make a correction, so I did something, and the darn thing kept going up. It kept going up, so I go back into it. So right now, it is where it is, and so I used to have 40-60, but now I went back into 70-30.
Fred says, and the Fed.
Yes,
It's I can understand the criticism of the Fed transferring money out of the U.S. and into European markets or any other foreign market to prop them up. Again, it goes to the, I hate to say it, New World Order, globalism.
Yeah.
Where if one domino gets toppled over, it'll be the domino effect for the entire world. We're so interwound, so intertwined, our markets, our economies. I understand that that's what they're doing it, but is it the right thing to do?
I mean, Fred, the Europeans have something similar. China has something similar. Mexico, Canada, they all have something similar to the Fed. And then you get involved in what they call currency manipulation. And so why would you be involved in currency manipulation? Well, if you're buying from me, for example, and I lower, let's use Mexico, for example. If I lower the value from dollar to pesos, if the peso is not worth as much as it used to be, then I'm going to buy more from Mexico, and they're going to buy less from us because it's too expensive. So this is where, I think when you hear about China, for example, they get accused of doing a lot of currency manipulation. That's what they're trying to do, make their prices more attractive. And China has been sending stuff, it's an incredible amount of merchandise that they send to us because obviously their products we buy them, they're cheaper. So I guess we have to blame ourselves. I don't know.
What's that term called where the dollar is the standard of the world?
Yeah.
So it's got
Well, yeah. So right now, we have the mechanisms in place where people use the standard as a store of value, and so petroleum, everything is traded in dollars. And so it just so happens that right now but people like Russia, like China, are trying to change the store of value, but it's going to be a while if they ever do it, because and I used to tell the students in class, because we have all kinds of mechanisms. For example, I'll give you one example. An embargo, for example. We can put an embargo on a country and we'll say, you cannot trade with this country at all. How can you do that? Well, we can. We'll freeze their accounts. We won't let them make transactions because they have to go through the Federal Reserve. We won't let you do any kind of transactions with that particular country. That's the power. Is it right? Is it wrong? Whatever. We can do that. We have had an embargo in Cuba since 1959, and Americans were not allowed to do any kind of transactions in Cuba. And to this day, if I'm not mistaken, they can do a lot of transactions. Yeah, I guess now I know that there at the end, President Obama had relaxed things, but I think they went back to what they used to be. So we have that ability to control who does business where. It's an incredible tools that we have at the Treasury Department to do those things. We do it. We do it.
the thing is, though, it's been, I guess they've been accused of actually starting wars with countries that refuse to participate in the central bank system.
Yeah.
You've got Saddam, you had Libya, you had Iran.
Yeah.
They refused to participate in the federal or the central bank system, so they went to war with them to get it. What do you think about that conspiracy theory?
Yeah. I'm reading Fred's comments there that keeping interest rates artificial low is perhaps a currency manipulation. Actually, you're probably right, Fred, but the currency manipulation would be, for example, where if the exchange rate between us and China, let's say, is 10-1, and all of a sudden we would change the exchange rate to something more favorable to us, then that would be a form of a currency manipulation.
Fred says,
yeah, all wars are bankers' wars. Yep, it's policy. It's policy. They say that politics is war and war is politics. So at the end of the day, it's about the policy that people are trying to implement. And if we can't solve it through diplomatic means, then obviously, Fred, that's what happens.
Of course, you've got some wag the tail, wag the dog, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wag the dog wars or events like the aspirin factory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's almost been a little bit over an hour. Let me go ahead and bring up a couple of points with the EIDL from the SBA for those small businesses. The emails have started going out from the SBA advising them to not reapply, but provide additional documentation to meet the new requirements so that they can distribute the balance of the $10,000 advance. They call it an advance, but another term for it would be the grant. Just be careful for those small businesses out there that get an email. You should not be getting any phone calls, first of all. Second of all, when you do get an email, make sure that it is a .gov. Make sure that it's an SBA.gov domain that you are responding to, because there's a lot of spam, a lot of phishing going on out there, and of course, a lot of scams.
Yeah.
And the PPP is still ongoing with little problems here and there, but for the most part, they are distributing funds from that. So if you didn't apply for PPP last year, you should. They opened that up again, and then turn around and apply for the second round of PPP. And anybody can do it. Anybody with a positive cash flow, if you're a gig worker, Lyft, any of those small mom and pop, you should apply. You
A
know,
lot of money out there.
I took advantage of their PPP and EIDL. Mario,
Excuse me?
do you know of anybody that took advantage of applying for the PPP or EIDL
Absolutely.
from the SBA?
Yeah. I know a lot of people that did it. I think some of the common complaints that I heard were that some people were not familiar with the process, how to start it, especially the smaller business individuals that were not familiar. And so once you give them a little bit of guidance, and then they get comfortable with it and they apply. But just like everything else, it requires forms, and they want information, so they can make a decision how much to give you.
Right, but really for about an hour's worth of work, hour or 2 hours of work, you should be able to get some of that funding and have it forgiven if you do the right things. Claudia, the proof is only 25% less compared to 2019, and I think pretty much everybody's income or net profit went down. So for the most part, I think everybody should be able to meet that requirement.
When I was in college, my professor would say 2 things you have to do in life: get to know your banker and have a lawyer. So if you are in business and you don't know a banker, you need to get to know one, because they can help you a lot. And when it comes to situations like this, and of course, a lawyer is for something more drastic, but you need to at least know 2 of them personally. Have their phone number handy.
Absolutely. Any other closing thoughts?
Well, Cruz, I enjoy doing this. I like the individuals that are sending messages, like Claudia and Fred. Thank you so much for paying attention to what we're saying. And the things that you're bringing up are, for me, they're extremely beneficial. I like what Fred said earlier, that the interest rates was a form of currency manipulation. I never thought about it that way, but Fred, that was a very good point. And so I appreciate that. So thank you for spending an hour with us.
And I thank you too. And we'll see you next week, next Saturday. And if you have any questions, any tax questions, and not necessarily stock related, be sure to send me a PM and I'll respond as best as I can. You all have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.